Welcome back to International Business. We finished up this last Tuesday, talking about one of the most important and significant events economically that we have seen in our lifetime. What is it that I'm speaking about? What is it that I'm speaking about? I'm talking about an agreement between two of the largest trading partners in the world. In fact, they are the largest trading partners in the world. The Transatlantic Investment Partnership between the EU and the US. That's absolutely right, gentlemen. Absolutely correct. What's the significance here? Tell me the significance. What are the implications? Start to use that intuitive business background that you have. Even if you don't have a business background, you can come up with some implications. What are some of these implications? What are some of the implications on the positive side? What are some of the implications on the negative side? And with that said, I don't know how much you've been able to read up on the Transatlantic Investment Partnership, but the overall consensus is that this is not only a win-win, but on the U.S. side, we may be larger winners than the EU. We may be larger winners than the EU. Now remember, there are 28 countries. Croatia, I'm already counting them. They're going to be accepted sometime in the next month and a half into the EU. There are 17 countries that are utilizing the euro. Not every country is in the same economic shape as their neighbor. They may be in a better or worse position. Each one of them will need to be evaluated based on several factors that we're going to be talking about today. Now, considering the 27 countries, 28 countries that we now have access to, relatively low barriers to entry, relatively, how would I say this? The ability to move goods, services, money, inventory, and people from country to country will be much easier once this is completed. And it's going to take a couple of years. I believe I heard that it was going to take about 2 years, which in my eyes might take closer to 3 years, right? Add 30% to that. Now, I'm a student of the flow of funds. Not only do I teach international business, but I'm an active participant in the global economy. I'm an active participant, which means that I have business relationships in China, in India. I'm building them in Europe. I have relationships, plenty of relationships in Europe, but I have not yet established a strong business tie where economically I am benefiting. I want us to all be, for just a moment, I want us to all put on a CFO hat for a minute. I want you to put on a CFO hat for a minute. And I want you to think about the velocity of money. What countries in the EU, of the 28 countries, what countries will the velocity of money increase? What countries will the velocity of money decrease? Where is it that you're going to position yourself? This is the exact conversation that I have with my partners and the thought process that I go through when I'm thinking about doing business in another country. Where is the money going? Where is the portfolio money going? That's investment money. Where is the FDI? Where that's also investment money, typically from larger MNCs. Portfolio money being more of smaller, say, private equity firms or investment firms or individuals speculating. Where is the money going to be going? That's what I want you to be thinking about over the next several months. After this class ends, you need to be in touch with me, because we know that the world is global. You are global managers, and as such, you will have new opportunities with the Transatlantic Investment Partnership. You will have new opportunities with the Transatlantic Investment Partnership. We need to figure out what the implications are, where the velocity of money is going and where it is not. Even if you're a web designer, absolutely, there's no question about it. You may think about developing a relationship, if you're a web designer, with individuals in Eastern Europe, where the cost of labor is relatively much cheaper than it is in Western Europe. You may think about building websites for those Eastern Europeans. You may think about establishing relationships. It is relevant for every single individual. Ben, you had a general question. You have a general class question. Okay, so let's take a step back. Ben has a general class question, unless you want to wait till the end of class. Okay, we'll get to that at the end of class. Now, we talked about the velocity of money, and that's the topic today. The velocity of money, and this is specific to the EU, okay? This is specific to the EU. Now, I want you to identify, how do you determine, Aram? Okay, so that's a great statement. How do you determine? You can't just come up and tell me, all right, let's look at places where the velocity of money is going to increase. Well, what am I measuring? I want you to identify countries' infrastructures. I want you to identify infrastructures. I want you to identify who's got a good infrastructure, whose infrastructure is not so good, and use a benchmark. So maybe benchmark the United Kingdom maybe benchmark against the United Kingdom, Germany, and say France. What are their, we know you need to look into their infrastructure and see what it is that makes their infrastructure so strong. And then from there, you can use them as a benchmark when you're evaluating all the other 26 countries, 25 countries. Okay, so I want you to identify what the weaknesses are and the strengths are of each one of these countries. This is absolutely a relative. I wish that I had enough time where I could demand that for the next 3 days, all you do is identify infrastructures, strengths and weaknesses. Okay? I also want you to identify countries with high incomes. What's their productivity like? Let me get a little more specific. What's their productivity like? What is their average income? What is their what's their healthcare system like? What's their technology system like? What's their technology infrastructure? What is their, where is it that you can look to find what kind of income they have? What I'm saying is, if they have disposable income, if they have a high degree of discretionary income, that may be an opportunity. But what happens if they have a very low? Each individual per capita has a very low amount of discretionary income. There still may be opportunity. There still may be plenty of opportunity. No question about it. They would be an emerging economy. And again, if we go back to the middle of this semester, emerging economies are buying goods and services at a faster rate than any other types of economies, versus we'll just benchmark it against developed economies. They're buying goods and services at a quicker clip than the developed countries. What are the infrastructure criterias? Logistics. You need to look at the transportation. Not just the ability to move quickly, but what does the transportation look like in terms of rail, highway, air? The infrastructure, we also need to be looking at internet access. How many people use the internet? I mean, it might seem like a trivial question, but I will tell you right now, there's going to be a difference between people that use the internet in Germany and people that are using the internet in Macedonia or Croatia. Access to Wi-Fi, access to communication. We're looking for also, and that's a great question. We're looking for infrastructure regarding the banking system. Is it an archaic system, or is it like Switzerland or the United Kingdom where they're known for banking? Maybe it's a tax-neutral jurisdiction like Luxembourg, where it's a very, very small country, but they have a focus on banking. Yeah, that's right. Also, filtered versus uncensored internet. Yeah, and I'm sorry, Artemis, you're absolutely right. We want to look at ports. We want to look at ports. You need, when we're talking, and you can continue, you're gonna continue to build this infrastructure mosaic of each country. And that's going to tell you, okay, so we have a NAFTA type agreement in the Transatlantic Investment Partnership, but how easy is it to transport goods? How easy is it for me to move around? Am I going to be stuck on a train for 8 hours when I only need to go an hour? Am I going to be able to move quickly, freely? How many languages they speak? What languages do you need to know? What relationships might you need to build? The infrastructure is a very broad brush. It's up to you to paint in the details, okay? It's up to you to paint in the details. And that also means looking at culture. And culture, we know from earlier classes, is all about norms, values, and beliefs. Okay? Let me give you an example. We went back, I'll go back to this. Walmart looked at many of the Northern European countries, the Nordic countries, and said, wow, they have some of the highest per capita incomes in the world, if not the highest. They're in the top 10, top 5, top 8. And we're going to go in there. We smell money. We smell money. We're going to go into Sweden. And they failed miserably in one of the highest per income brackets in the world. They failed simply because they did not want to understand the cultural norms, beliefs, and values of that culture, of that market. Egregious. Again, I talked to you about this word, flagrantly bad. Flagrantly bad. Their cultural IQ, their sense of empathy was nil. Walmart had to tuck their tail between their legs and leave. I wonder how much money they wasted and they spent because they couldn't get out of their Arkansas mentality. And I say that in the sense that it's a profit mentality that they had. I don't want to say all Arkansas individuals have a profit mentality, but they couldn't get out of a provincial mentality, I should say, where Walmart is used to. They're used to going into a market and immediately dominating it. The hubris was definitely present, and the people of Sweden knew it, and they smelled it also, and they rejected it. They rejected it. I also want you to identify countries. I need you to not only, while you're looking at their infrastructure, you're looking at their per capita income, you're looking at their culture, look at identifying comparative advantages. And I don't know how many of you have taken economics, but a comparative advantage is what a country does well naturally, what it is that they do well, what is it that they are known for. Saudi Arabia would be oil. A country like the United States would be high-end, high-tech manufacturing and service. Germany is known for their engineering prowess, et cetera, et cetera. Greece would be fish. Shipping. Greece is known for their shipping and tourism, amongst other things. I also want you to look at, I need you to identify, I want you to put an asterisk by this. What do they import? And number 6, what do they export? What do they import? What do they export? This is relevant because not only do we have the capability of expanding our presence in the EU, but you may now start thinking about bringing some of their products here. How many of you have been to a European market, a small store possibly, in wherever it is that you live? There are several of them here in very, very small pockets in Phoenix. There are several of them. There aren't a lot of them. But you go in there and there's a deli. There's also goods and services. There are goods in there. There are also services, typically travel services that they also try to facilitate. Not very well, but there are travel services. They want you to come in there and buy not only Italian sandwiches to go, but they want you to buy olive oil. They want you to buy wine. They want you to buy things that they can bring in. Those, let me tell you something. That's an opportunity. Those little mom and pop Euro stores and Euro cafes, I have a feeling are going to expand and grow exponentially. So consider, I want you to consider, so these are essentially six identifying, what was it, research factors. 6 identifying research factors. And again, this is going to tell you where the velocity of money is going. And just because a country is emerging, or just because that country doesn't have a lot of disposable income now, doesn't mean that that's going to be the same in the next 5 years or 10 years. Now, I want you to consider the joint venture opportunity. We've talked about this. I want you to consider joint venture. Now, I'm going to, is it a triangle? No, it's a square, Ben. It's a square. So as U.S. exporter, you're going to start here. And I wanted to map this out. I was thinking about this yesterday. And I wanted to map this out. I can't win with you, Ben. I can't win with you. You're going to start here. And you're going to move into this joint venture relationship. So you're going to have the partner. And the partner is going to be specific for distribution. Remember, if you remember, I told you, be aware of those joint venture partners that not only are distributors, but also want to be your marketing arm. Okay? The distributor is going to cut straight away to the consumer. This is going to be retail, or we'll just say B2B, or B2C. See a triangle, really? So if somebody says that to you, run away. Yeah, well, I wouldn't say run away. You could still utilize them. That's a fair question, Artemis. If somebody says, look, we've got a great distribution, we understand the infrastructure, we have the relationships, but you're going to need to spend some money in order to pull it off the shelves or in order to get into the gray market, whatever it may be. That's a little bit of a red flag in the sense that they may not be directly asking for it, but if they do, or even if they don't, I want you to think about getting somebody else to help you do the advertising. And this is something where you might be able to have a stronger impact, because the distribution side, the impact is coming from your joint venture partner. Their results are going to be a reflection of their relationships. Well, on the advertising side, you may be able to hire somebody, an advertising executive that really understands the pulse of your consumer. And you may be able to identify where and when, and then the frequency of how often you're going to advertise to make sure that your targeted customer gets hit with those ads relatively frequently. So I would say that you're going to have a direct line to a different advertiser than your joint venture. So you're going to have also a joint venture in marketing. And they too are going to be pounding the consumer with your ads. And then eventually what happens is the money comes back to you. But be careful, because not all the money comes back to you. There is going to be funds going back to the joint venture partner. And in many cases, the money is going to go from the consumer to the joint venture partner. They are going to have control of it. It's not going to go back to you, whether you have a bank account in that country or not. Ultimately, it needs to get back to you. But the reality of it is, those funds are going to go back to the joint venture. And then you're going to get compensated. So trust is a key component when evaluating your joint venture partner. This is without any question. I mean, in many cases, you're going to have to go in blindly. You're going to have to really trust your joint venture partner. You're going to have, because somebody's going to have to pay them. They've got the infrastructure to receive payments. You don't. They've got the internal infrastructure as an organization. I wish it was this easy. I wish it was this easy where you went straight from the consumer back to your pocketbook and then down to, then you cut a check out to the joint venture. That's not how it works. The primary line of funds goes to the joint venture. Be careful. Be very, very careful. Now, as a sidebar, I wanted to say that if you are going to be borrowing money in another country, so if you're going to be borrowing money in, say, Japan, you're going to be borrowing money in, say, the Czech Republic, and you've got sales in the Czech Republic, pay them back in their currency. Pay them back in their own currency. It's good business. Don't convert your currency to dollars, repatriate it, then get taxed in the US, and then have to pay off your joint venture partner or the bank, whoever it may be. No. If you're going to borrow money, make sure you keep the money in a bank account there, the money that you get, and then you pay it back directly in that currency. The tax implications and the transfer price, I mean, you're going into a whole ball of wax that can become very, very complicated. Very complicated. Now, your marketing partners, and this is your joint venture in marketing. Your marketing partners are going to make a triangle, right? B2B and B2C. At the top, you're going to have the partner that you have hired to do the advertising and the marketing. They are going to send the message. They are going to send the message, and the message is going to be all about quality, performance, made in the USA. That's a big one, and I'll go over that in a minute. Pricing, and then the overall benefits of your product or service, whatever that may be. Whatever that may be. This is your strategy that you need to relay to your joint venture partner, because I'm here to tell you that I have had it happen before where we trusted our marketing partner in another country. We trusted that they knew what the message was that we were trying to convey. And they didn't. They didn't do it right. We sent them collateral, we sent them material, but the message, the actual feeling that we wanted the consumers to feel, that what we wanted them to recognize, was not conveyed properly. So the reason why I put this here is because strategically, it's going to be up to you to tell your joint venture partner in marketing what it is that you want the consumers to hear. Is it quality? Is it pricing? What is it in the performance? How often do you want them to hear about made in the USA? What are the ultimate benefits? Because if you leave it to your joint venture partner, you're going to throw money away. You're going to throw money down the toilet, and then they're going to come back to you and say, well, you know what? We need more money. It's just not effective. And you're going to say, well, wait a minute. I don't have more money. I'm not a tree of money that you can just pick it off my leaves. No, you're going to say, well, what have you been doing? Well, we've done this and we've done this. And you're going to say, wow, wait a minute. That's not what I'm intending. That was not what we had discussed. It's not what I thought I was getting. You're not getting the distance, because at the end of the day, it's going to be about ROI, right? You're going to be judged on your ROI. You're going to need to predetermine the strategy going into an international market before you just give them money and say, okay, go off and be somebody today, and hopefully you help me out too in the process. No. No, no, no. We have to build. So the takeaway here is build the customer strategy, and this would be for marketing, for each market. It's not a trial. Now there's going to be trial and error, but this is not a, wow, I hope this works out and we're going to try this, we're going to try that. No, you build the strategy and you have them execute the tactics. Tactically, you need them to be talking about performance. You need to be talking to them about, they need to be talking about your product in respect to made in the USA, et cetera, whatever that may be. You're going to have to build it before you give them a dime. Let me give you a statistic here. 80% of all executives agree And I'm going to say they strongly agree that customer strategies are important. It kind of sounds like one of those, watered down cliches you would read out of a book. And it is. And that's where I got it. The question that I have is, what in the heck were the other 20% thinking? What were they thinking? Of course, customer strategies are important. Don't rely on your joint venture partner. Don't give them that power to control your advertising. You need to take that into consideration, but it doesn't mean that you need to give them the power to control the whole shebang. The whole shebang. I can't tell you strongly enough, you have to be proactive. Don't go into a market thinking you're just going to throw money at it. You need to continue to work and operate more than ever in a blue ocean. That oblique strategy that we talked about earlier in the semester, come in under the radar. Come in with the guerrilla marketing mindset where you're going to have to be doing a lot of the strategy. You're going to have to be helping them execute those tactics. And then you're going to have to monitor and measure. Okay, you're going to have to monitor and measure. And in international business, it's all about monitoring and measuring, right? And measuring what, Aram? Measuring the ROI, the return on investment. For those of you, and this is, although it is a ROI is used for everything now, it seems, the acronym du jour, the reality of it is that you really will be measured on your success, and that's going to be your return on your investment. How many dollars are we putting into the market? How much are we getting back out? Red Bull. I knew an executive at Red Bull. When they launched into the United States, they flooded the market with money. They flooded. Red Bull was everywhere. And the plan was that after 3 years, they were going to require the U.S. Red Bull market to start advertising on their own. No longer were they going to be getting money from their parent company. No longer was that going to happen. They were going to be getting funds from their own sales. Those sales, that money was going to have to be reinvested, but Red Bull ended up executing that strategy and tactics beautifully. Do you remember when Red Bull came into the market? It was saturating us every day with advertising so they could get market share. And if you've noticed that Red Bull has now changed tack, you still see Red Bull a lot of places, but it's typically in now sports arenas or X Sports, the X Games, things along those lines, Daredevil, high wire acts, et cetera, where they can possibly get a big bang for their buck because everybody wants to see Evel Knievel jump across the Grand Canyon. And they're advertising with celebrities, and that's right. So you see Red Bull on jerseys in football or soccer, I should say. But it's monitoring and measuring. And the way we do this, and I want to point this out, this isn't just applicable for international business. This is applicable for your own domestic business. We look at things in three ways. We look at projects graphically and analytically. And these two seem to dominate, especially in the engineering world, graphically and analytically. And these become hypotheses that then become strategy. But we're missing something. And this is where you need to look at international business and your own day-to-day business. You need to look at it practically. You need to look at launching into a country or launching any project that you may have also as practical. Is it practical? Let me tell you, when China started to emerge as the next great economy, this was in the 90s. A lot of people went to the volume. They went straight to volume and said 1.3, 1.4 billion people, holy cow. If we just sell 1%, you know, if we just capture 1% of the market, we're going to be in hog heaven. We're going to be making money left and right. Well, there are 700 million people that are still in the agricultural area, and there's probably closer to 900 million people who subsist on less than $2 a day. Are they part of your target market? Although graphically and analytically, it looked like a great idea. Countries went in there or companies went into China and failed miserably because they didn't look at whether or not it was practical. They didn't look to say, wow, you know, can we reach these people? They're in the agricultural area. How do we get to them? How practical is it for your company to actually reach those individuals? How easy is it? That's a huge barrier to entry. Huge barrier to entry. That was not the case. What are you referring to, Artemis? We need to be looking at this, though, practically all the time. I'm stressing this because all too often we only look at it graphically and analytically. Companies entering China. That's not always the case. A lot of companies have learned. A lot of companies have learned from the mistakes that were made in the 90s. But the reality of it is when China was allowed into the WTO in 93 or 94, companies, without thinking, looked at the volume of people and said, we're going. We're going. And they encountered barriers that they never dreamed of. So practically, look at it in a practical matter, in a practical sense, I should say. Don't fall into the fallacy of volume. All right. We have some additional, I have an additional triangle here for you. When we look at the B2B and the B2C, And now this is your company. This is your company up here. And we're identifying the landscape. With both of these, I want you to draw not a triangle, but I want you to look at these two statements. Knowing your customer. That's great. We know that this is relevant everywhere. Know your customer, know who they are. But as you decide to move forward in business and in your education, you're going to learn very quickly that you're going to need to know your customer's customer on both of these legs. Know your customer's customer. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by this? This is the second level. This is the second level. This is what separates middle management from the executive level. The executive level often understands not only the customer. If you want to get into that stratosphere of strategy, you not only need to understand your customer, but you need to understand who your customers' needs and wants are. As you develop into industry, this is going to be the topic du jour. This is going to be the topic you're going to bring up. Absolutely relevant. Did I miss explanation of what B2B and B2C are? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, business to business. Business to business, thank you, Tim, and business to consumer. Business to business and business to consumer. You may be selling a product to a company in Europe that is taking your product and using it as an input to create a finished good. And you may be selling these all day long. You may have had a relationship with them for years. And then all of a sudden, and I've seen this happen, all of a sudden one day the company doesn't want to sign another contract with you to supply goods, to supply that part. Why don't they want to supply? Because they found somebody else who is providing a product not necessarily better than yours, but it resonates with the consumer. So when they put it all together, it resonates with their end user much, much more. You need to understand not only your customer's needs, but your customer's needs. Know your customer's customer. Microsoft is an example. They sell to businesses. They sell Windows directly to consumer. That's absolutely right. Like a game controller company. I'm not sure I know what that is. But absolutely, Tim. Absolutely. Now, I want to pause it here for a second, and I want to talk about what international really means. I'm going to give you a few examples. And I want you to guess. Yes, I want you to guess. Who owns Firestone? And by this, I mean country. I don't mean the company. Who owns Firestone? Somebody give me a guess. What country owns Firestone? You don't have to be right. I just want you to guess. What country is it that owns Firestone? France? No. It used to be the US, Germany, Italy, Japan. How about this is my favorite ice cream. How about Ben & Jerry's? What country? How about Ben & Jerry's? The US? Canada? The United Kingdom? Firm in the United Kingdom owns Ben & Jerry's. How about Smith & Wesson? Smith & Wesson. Russia? Australia? Firm in the United Kingdom owns them. How about 7-Eleven? How about 7-Eleven? Tell me who you think owns 7-Eleven. India? A Japanese company does. How about Carnation? The dairy firm. How about Carnation? Switzerland. How about Huffy Bicycles? How about Huffy Bicycles? China. The list goes on and on and on. Now, on the flip side, I'll just give you a couple of examples, because a lot of people look at this and they say, oh my gosh, we have sold out. No, we're global. We haven't sold out, we're global. There's a company in Wisconsin called Wisconsin, this is in the US, Wisconsin Central Freight. They own all of the United Kingdom's rail freight. All those rail cars, including the Queen's private train. Including the Queen's private train. There's a company in Ohio, and I forget their name, but they electronically control all of the water in Saudi Arabia. They went into Saudi Arabia and built the infrastructure controlling the pumps and the devices and the pipeline. There's a company in Ohio that controls the water in Saudi Arabia. There's another company called Pacific Corporation. Pacific Corporation here in the US, headquartered in the US company. And they are the largest natural gas distributor in the United Kingdom. We are global. We are absolutely global. Don't be afraid of companies from foreign lands wanting to acquire U.S. firms. It's because they see an opportunity. They want to participate. They want to grow. They want our innovation. You can excel. No question about it. You can excel if you are open to working within other cultures. I have individuals that I know close to me and family members that aren't willing to, I hate to say it, but they're not willing to learn how to communicate with other cultures, with other countries, with other markets. I don't know how many of you know someone like that, but I hate to say it, but there are people like that. And I see the world passing them by. I see the world passing them by. In the global markets, you're going to start hearing terms like hard currency and soft currency. Not to be confused with hard power and soft power. Hard currency is going to be the dollar, the yen, the euro, the pound, etc. Soft currency is going to be, the peso. It's going to be the rupee, the ruble, etc. The ruble. I don't even know how to say it. The ruble. The ruble. What we need to take away is that from not only this class today, but when we're looking at the big picture of where you're going in the global market as a global manager, can you improve the global intellect of your company? Can you improve the global intellect? Can you globalize the intellect of your company? And if you can, you will then begin to see where the velocity of money is going. Where is it that you're going to want to be? Position yourself. Is the velocity of money, because of the transatlantic investment partnership, going to increase in many of the Eastern Bloc countries? I'm willing to bet yes. Do you have relationships? Yes. This is the euro. This is the euro, the yen, the dollar, and this is the British pound. Okay, good question. And these are the currencies that you see regularly being traded on the foreign exchange. 80% of all transactions today, 80% of all global transactions today are done in US dollars. Oil is petrodollars, which are US dollars. Oil is traded in petrodollars, which is US dollars. If you're in China and you want to buy oil from Nigeria, you're going to have to convert your renminbi, the RMB, you're going to have to convert the RMB into US dollars so that Nigeria will then accept that payment. They don't take RMB. You know why they don't take RMB? Because China's federal government, their reserves, I don't want to say their federal government, their central banks do not stand ready to buy and sell their currency. It's not liquid. And the value is pegged against the US dollar. So why not just make it so that they have to convert it into US dollars? And that's exactly what happens. And do you think that irks the Chinese? Absolutely it does. China wants the RMB to be the currency used globally. And they get upset about it. But at the same time, it's their own fault. They're not willing to absorb their own currency, nor are they willing to let it freely change in the marketplace. It is pegged against the US dollar. So they may complain about it. And you know, we complain also. We complain against China and we say, hey, you need to let your renminbi, you need to let the RMB trade freely against the dollar because it's so low that we keep importing product because it's so low. If you let it rise, Americans will buy more American-made products. And yet that's somewhat hypocritical because we want the cheap products from China. It's all rhetoric. There's sound bites that politicians use. I have no problem with China. In fact, I'm glad that China pegs the RMB against the dollar because we buy a lot of cheap goods from China. If they let their currency freely exchange, boy, oh boy. Talk about paying a lot for a spatula. Prices of goods would go through the roof. And we're talking about low-tech, cheap goods. Let China continue along their path. Let China continue along the low-tech manufacturing and let them continue to peg the RMB against the dollar. And you need to know this. You need to understand which countries of the world have a hard currency, which countries have a soft currency. Now I want to take a step back and I want to pause for a second. We have a question. Do you think we will ever see a standardized world currency even more than the dollar is now? Like a combination of the euro and dollar? No. No, no, no. Because what controls the strength of a dollar or a currency, there are three primary factors, or well, there are two, I should say. Confidence and liquidity. People have confidence in the United States. You don't say they have confidence in North America. They may have confidence in Mexico. They may have confidence in Canada, but to a different degree. And the U.S. and these are the isolationist fears. And what you're saying, Tim, is a completely valid question. No question about it. But there are isolationists in the United States. There are individuals that believe in our protectionist, in a protectionist mentality that say, oh my gosh, we're going to be controlled by the UN. We're going to have one global currency, et cetera, et cetera. No, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Because you don't have control over Mexico. We don't have control over Canada. Countries have confidence. They may have a tremendous amount of confidence in these other two North American countries, but to a different degree. And that's a heck of a question. I really, really like that because it's not a one-size-fits-all. Look at Europe. You have a central bank that is imposing now austerity measures on the pigs. And do we know what the pigs are? Haven't we gone over the pigs? Portugal, Italy, Greece, Spain, all having problems. All having problems. Gold behind it. Gold is quickly becoming, it got very hot there as a hedge, and it may come back again. But how do you trade gold? How do you trade it? I mean, you slice off a sliver of it. How do you back it? And there's too many people. There's too much money that needs to be in people's hands. It's funny. I was looking at an article the other day. It came out in the ASU, in the ASU newsletter, Sunrise, I believe it was, and it talked about the currency of the Aztecs. And they primarily used cotton and I forgot the other one. It was cotton and Something else. Corn, maybe. Can you imagine wheelbarrowing around cotton and corn to trade? Or can you imagine wheelbarrowing around some kind of precious metal like gold? Gold hit a 3-year low today, and that's a global number. That's a global number. Yeah, and a global political governance would have to come first, and that definitely, that most likely is not going to happen. And again, remember that the EU formed primarily because they wanted to prevent war. They wanted to prevent war. Okay? Now, when you go into a country, you need to tune yourself into the culture. And we talked about this earlier in the semester, but I thought that I would pause it here for a second and tell you some of the slogans again that came up when these companies launched into countries. When Pepsi launched into China, they misinterpreted the Mandarin and they literally wrote, well, let me give you their slogan. Their slogan was, "Come alive, you're in the Pepsi generation." When they launched into China, it translated into brings your ancestors back from the dead. When Coors went into Mexico, their slogan was, in the US, turn it loose. You remember that? Turn it loose. In Mexico, it translated to suffer from diarrhea. Not the best slogan for a beverage. Not the best slogan for a beverage. When Kentucky Fried Chicken went into Latin America, their slogan was, this is what they translated literally into. No, this was the original slogan. It takes a strong man to make a chicken tender. And I'm not sure what that means exactly, but that was here in the US. And they translated it into Latin America. It takes an aroused man to make a chicken affectionate. It takes an aroused man to make a chicken affectionate. Clearly, there's a gap for you in international business. Let's see, I have a couple of others. Or at least I thought I had a couple of others. When GE merged with Plessis Telecom in France, they launched under the symbol GPT. And when you say these three letters together in France, I believe, and I'm probably going to mess this up, GPT. I'm hoping that I'm saying that correctly. I consulted my French buddy, and I don't know if I have said it correctly or not. But that basically means I have gas. That was the name of their joint venture. I just released gas is basically what it said. Not the best joint venture name out there. We will not be using this in the notes for those of you. Gerber, did you know that Gerber is not in France? Gerber is not in France. Because Gerber in French means vomiting. Gerber in French means vomiting. Nova, no-go, that's right. That also is in Latin America. And you know what's really strange here? I'm wondering this. I'm really really want my first car that I ever had when I was 16. The first car that I got was my grandfather's 1969 Chevy Nova. And you might say, Aaron, that's a really cool car. And I had a lot of people say, wow, Aaron, that's cool. And then I told them, yeah, but I had the sedan. I had the 4-door, not the 2-door that looked like a Chevelle. That might have been worth money. I had the 4-door. And my grandfather, being Mexican, bought the Nova, meaning no go. So he must have done some research, but he must have been one of the few individuals to buy a Chevy Nova in a few Hispanic individuals to buy a Chevy Nova in 1969. Studebaker was yours. I also had a 1931 Rockne Studebaker that never ran. And I think I was given these cars because nobody else wanted them, and they became my liability. At a very young age, I took on a lot of liabilities, I think. Anyhow, I'll forego some of the others, but I wanted to take a quick break and share some of those. If you have any others, feel free to pass them on. Oh, wait a minute. I might give you a couple of more. In the U.S., that slogan, "Got Milk," and I forget where they launched this. The slogan, "Got Milk." Well, I'm not going to tell you that one. Yeah, I'm not. Use your imagination. Let's see. There's one more. There is a Japanese company called Kinki Nippo Tours. And they launched in the United States, and they started receiving requests from Americans for unusual tours, we'll say. Kinky tours. They had to change their name. They had too many requests from Americans for real types of kinky tours, apparently. The point is, do your research. And there is a broad, I mean, there are numerous individuals out there that don't want to understand the global world that we live in. There are a lot of companies that could use your skills. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you today, and that we're going to talk about when we talk about the velocity of money, coming back full circle to the beginning of class, is foreign sales. And we know this, we've gone over this. Foreign sales are seen as a profitable extension of domestic sales, right? Well, you know that I'm a very visual person. I have to illustrate everything. Here's the U.S. This is your firm, the U.S. firm. And we call this the hub and spoke. The hub and spoke model. When you launch into the EU, there are 27 countries, 28 in the next month and a half that will be available for you to enter into. Or vice versa. You may be looking at goods to import. But you do this with every country, with every large market. Asia, South America, Africa, etc. The hub and spoke model really gives you an idea as to what you're going to need to build and how it needs to be built. And if you notice that this is a very centralized model. It's not decentralized. It's a very centralized model. Everyone reports back to you, and you push out the message back to them, back and forth. The ebb and flow of communication. This is part of understanding the velocity of money, being able to create a model that is effective, collaborative, and communicative. All right, any questions or comments today? I want you to look at the velocity of money. I want you to start thinking about countries. I want to see this on the message board. What countries have you exposed where there may be a gap that you may be able to fill? What countries would you like to import from? Where is there a gap in the United States? I happen to love sardines. Maybe you could buy sardines. I don't know. I'm just saying. I love pastries. Maybe you could form a joint venture with a patisserie in France and bring me pastries, because I'd hate to give everybody C's and B's in this class. I still have not received any pastries. All foreign markets fell last night after our friend hinted at the end of quantitative easing. Bread from Panama. There we go. Boy, oh boy. Now you're talking, Artemis, but that's not in the EU, but that's okay. We have an agreement with Panama. Yes, we're slowing down our quantitative easing, which is a good thing. You may see interest rates start to creep up a little bit. If you're thinking about borrowing money, whether for a house or a car or whatever it may be, now is probably a good time. Interest rates may creep up slightly, ever so slightly, over the next couple of years. All right, any other questions? Any other comments? This is exciting stuff. Test next week. Oh, Ben. I will let you know. Well, no, next week is, next Friday will be the final exam. Next Friday will be the final exam. But I'm not going to talk about it until Tuesday and Thursday of next week. All right. Also, what classes are you teaching in the fall? Look up OMT, look up TEM, and type in my name, and you'll see. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but I'll be teaching tech entrepreneurship. I really appreciate it. One last thing I would like to say is, I believe you will be getting a survey in the mail, or in the email, I should say. You'll be getting an email about my performance, and regardless of whether you have given me pastries or not, judge me accordingly. And please do this. And also, if you can, at the end of the semester, I would humbly ask that you also rate me on myprofessor.com. Okay? All right. Well, thank you. Please rate me. These are important to me, things that I can improve on, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Fantastic. Thanks. Over and out. See you guys on Tuesday. Have a great weekend. Be safe and start the discussion board topic, the velocity of money.